What makes a camera professional is the fact that it's in the hands of a professional. So if you think shelling out a lot of money to have a nice camera will make you a better photographer or cinematographer, you are sadly mistaken. Sup, bud? Hey, welcome to my new set. Well, it's actually not my set. This is actually somebody else's. I just wanted to have a nice desk shot because of what I'm going to be talking about today, which is not this great set. We're here to talk about this. Now, this is the Canon R8. It's Canon's entry-level full-frame mirrorless camera, and the lens I have attached to it is their RF series 24-70 2.8. This is a beast of a setup and something that I'm going to call the ultimate beginner professional camera setup, or something like that. It's a work in progress. Now you might be asking, why did I upgrade from the GH5 to this Canon when my GH5 was already a perfectly acceptable and great camera? And that's a really good question and what I wanted to talk about today, because I swear it's only a little bit because I wanted to buy a new camera. But first, let's swap out cameras so I can show you the GH5. Now, the GH5 is a very capable camera. For the last, I don't know, maybe 5 years or so, this has been my go-to camera, whether it's for personal projects like YouTube or professional projects. From photos to video, this has been the workhorse that's got me through. And there are a lot of really good features that this camera has that honestly make it an incredible camera for anybody who wants to have a decent mirrorless camera. It can shoot up to 4K 422 10-bit color. Without getting into the nitty-gritty, is really good. 4K is the resolution, 422 color means it can see over 1 billion colors, and 10-bit means I have more flexibility in post to manipulate those colors. It has dual SD slots, which means that any video or photo you take, you can copy it to 2 separate SDs, ensuring that if one ever fails, the other will be used as a backup. It has a bunch of knobs and buttons and switches on it so that you can easily adjust almost every feature on the fly without having to go through the menu. It also has dual stabilization. The camera body has stabilization, but the lens also has stabilization. With the two of those on, as long as you're holding it decently, this is rock solid. This camera is nothing short of an incredible workhorse camera. So what can the Canon possibly offer that's an upgrade compared to this? Now, just like the GH5, the R8 can also record at 4K 422 10-bit color, but its 4K is downsampled from 6K, which makes it a little bit sharper. There's also a lot less buttons and controls on the R8 versus the GH5. I only get 2 dials on the R8 versus the GH5, I get 3. If I need to adjust things on the fly, it's a lot easier to do it on the GH5 since all the buttons and dials are right there at the tips of my fingers. If I need to adjust something on the R8, it's a little bit more difficult. There is a workaround that I'll talk about in a bit when I get to the lens, but in short, there's only 2 dials, which means it's kind of hard unless you have this specific lens. Now, a lot of people were talking about how the R8 doesn't feel very good in the hands, and to be honest, I think it works fine. I don't think my hands are enormous by any stretch of the imagination, and I do kind of choke the camera, but when I do, it fits really nicely in the hands. It has a nice deep grip versus the GH5, which is a bit fatter of a grip, so you might like that. But honestly, this feels really good in the hands. But one thing where they do differ is the R8 only has 1 SD slot, so there's no redundant shooting on the R8. If you're a wedding photographer, this might be a deal breaker for you, but honestly, for me, I'm okay with it. And lastly, we have the batteries. Now, here's the battery for the GH5, and here is the battery for the Canon R8. I mean, you can tell these are very different batteries. Now, the battery life on the R8 has a bit of a bad rep, and to be honest, I don't actually think it's that bad. Yeah, the R8 does turn off a little quicker than the GH5, but if you're shooting a YouTube video or you're shooting photos and you're conscious about turning the camera off and preserving battery, you can easily make it through a production with minimal problems with the battery. So my advice is pick up 2 batteries minimum to do a project, and the battery life should be just fine on the R8. The GH5 seems to be kicking the R8's butt here. I mean, it's got more buttons, dual SD, in-body stabilization. So what's going on here? Why would I upgrade to the Canon R8? R8. See, while both cameras shoot at 4K 422 10-bit color, the R8 has built-in C-Log 3, and the GH5 doesn't. You can pay extra to have a log profile on the GH5, but honestly, who wants to do that? For those people that don't know, a log profile is just a flat profile that we can record in. Later, we'll add color in on post. Now, why would you want a log profile? Because a log profile allows you a larger dynamic range in your image. Look at this shot of me next to the window. It's hard to expose for this because it's such a wide dynamic shot. Either you can expose for me and the window is blown out, or you can expose for the window and I'm too dark. Either way, it's a tricky scene to shoot, but because the R8 has a log profile, I'm able to preserve those highlights much better, and I'm able to drag them down in post and get a much more acceptable exposure for my shot. So log profiles definitely save the day. Now, the GH5 is a wonderful video camera, but a photography camera, it is not. It boasts an incredible 12 frames a second, which is fine, but not great. The R8, on the other hand, posts a very impressive 40 frames a second in raw burst mode. So if you're interested in shooting action and sports, well, the R8 is definitely the way to go. Now, the R8 does beat the GH5 when it comes to autofocus. It has a very sticky and accurate autofocus, unlike the GH5, which has been proven pretty unreliable in my tests. But the biggest difference between the R8 and the GH5 is something I've actually already stated. See, the R8 is Canon's entry-level full-frame camera. Now, both of these cameras have a similar megapixel count. The GH5 has just over 20 and the R8 has about 24. They seem pretty similar when you just look at that number, but the magic happens when we remove the lens. We can see that the sensor on the R8 is huge. In fact, it's twice the size as the sensor on the GH5. This larger sensor allows us to gather in more light, but it also has one major implication, and it's attached to the camera right now. Now, as stated in the beginning of this video, I think this combo is the best beginner professional setup. Not just because the R8 is a great camera, but because the Canon 70-200 RF version is an incredible lens. Now, there is another Canon lens that I could have got with this. Canon just released a 28-70 f2.8, and you definitely can get that. It seems that the results on that lens are really nice, but I have one major issue. I want that extra 4mm. This lens is 24, which is pretty wide. It's just wide enough for me to vlog on it, which is what I'm also going to be using this lens for. This isn't just for client work. I hope to continue to make more YouTube videos, but if we go any further, like 28mm, even though I got long arms, it becomes a bit of a stretch, literally, to try to get me to fit in the frame, and we turn into more of a close-up look. So I think this lens, the 24-70, though a lot more expensive, is the lens for me. One other reason in particular why I think this lens is the best lens for a beginner professional, because of this final dial here. That's called a control dial. Essentially, you can put this to be whatever you want. In my case, I put it to be my ISO. Now I can control my aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, all on the dials of the camera. So remember how the GH5 had 3 dials and I was able to control all 3 of those with just the tips of my fingers? I can now do the same on the Canon because of this dial, which makes it an invaluable tool for exposing on the fly. Plus, 24-70 is a standard mid-range lens. In fact, both cameras have a very similar focal length. Even though they have different numbers on them, because of the sensor sizes, they're actually the same focal length, or at least very similar. Finally, and the last reason why I think this lens is the perfect lens for a beginner photographer has to do with this red ring. No, it's not just because red's a nice color. It's because this is Canon's premium glass. If you want the best of the best that Canon, Sony, or Nikon have, you have to go with their full frame lens options. Now, I highly recommend that if you're on your own camera journey, you invest in a brand with the lenses that you like the most, not the camera. I know the camera is the cool, sexy thing that everyone looks at, but I promise you, the better investment is the lens. This lens will stay with me for the rest of my life, assuming I don't break it. But the camera, I'll probably change out at some point in my life, which is why I think this is an excellent beginner professional setup. Not only do we have a decent camera that can have very impressive results, but we also have a lens that will grow with us long after this camera is no longer able to perform the tasks that we want it to. Now, at the end of the day, you don't need a fancy camera or lens to be professional. What makes a camera professional is the fact that it's in the hands of a professional. Learning the basics of photography and videography is so much more important than having really good equipment. So if you think shelling out a lot of money to have a nice camera will make you a better photographer or cinematographer, you are sadly mistaken. This is just a tool, a great tool, but a tool nonetheless. This is not the only professional camera you can purchase, but it is one that I think will start any professional photographer or videographer's journey off on a good foot. Let me know what you guys think is the ultimate beginner professional setup for a photographer or a cinematographer down in the comment section below. Until next time, take it easy, bud.